And the first speaker this morning is an amazing Calgarian. His name is Kolodziejzyk. And Greg is one of those people that I go, wow. I mean, he has started companies. He has sold them. He is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. He is retired multiple times, and he has done incredible things. And he is now, in fact, a two-time world record holder for distance traveled through human power. And he'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But Greg's message is hugely inspiring. Greg does this now, takes his message out around the world, talks to organizations, to companies about how you can deliver on human excellence and the pursuit of ideas and solutions and human power. And so we're delighted. We're actually honored. Greg does this full-time, and we're really thrilled that he's going to be part of it today. He's really going to tell you about what it takes to take your ideas, make them successful, and maybe encase yourself in one of these things, which he'll tell you a little bit more about. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kolodziejzyk.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you. Here's the sound. There you go. Good morning. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you would have done anything at all to get it? And then partway through your journey to get that thing, in the middle of all the pain and the suffering and everything going wrong and the stress, you stop and you say to yourself, what was I thinking? Well, that's kind of the story of my life. Picture this. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm lying on my back, and I'm pedaling this human-powered vehicle around a racetrack at a speed of about 45 kilometers per hour in the dark. I am wedged into this capsule that fits my entire body so tightly. My shoulders and my elbows are actually bleeding from constantly rubbing up and down on the inside of the carbon fiber capsule shell. I've got no room to move any part of my body in there, except my lips to suck liquid food and water out of a tiny little tube, my hands to operate a steering bar, and of course my legs, because I was pedaling this thing as fast as I possibly could. It was November 25th, 2005. And I was on this 3-kilometer oval test track that was owned by Auburn University, cut out of the forest in Alabama. And I was attempting to travel under my own power farther than any person in history had ever traveled in exactly one day. Farther, in fact, than most animals can travel in a single day, except for perhaps a few migrating birds. I was challenging a world record. I had exactly 24 hours to pedal as many laps, as many miles of this track as I possibly could. The existing record that I was trying to break was set by a German professional cyclist in 1995 of 1,021 kilometers. So that's the distance between here and Vancouver by bicycle in one day. Most people will never drive their cars that far in a single day. And I had to pedal this bullet bike at least that far to break the current world record. So I've been circling this racetrack relentlessly nonstop now for the last 17 hours. If you can imagine, my legs were screaming at me. My lungs felt like they were going to explode. Since I can't get out of my capsule, I have to pee into a tube that's actually fixed to me by catheter. So I'm drinking liquid food and water out of one tube, and I am just praying that my pit crew hasn't somehow mixed up those tubes in there. Since I was barely on the minimum record pace required to break this existing record, I really had to focus hard on just continuing to turn those pedals over and to fight every cell in my body that was screaming at me to stop. So what was I thinking? Well, I had asked that question, what if there were no rules? How far can a man travel under his own power in a single day? What if I could use all of the technology available to me to help me accomplish that goal without resorting to stored energy of any sort or wind power? What would be the limit? How far could I go? And to answer that question, I had bitten off way more than I could chew. And now I was realizing that I had to chew it. My story is one of an average guy with big dreams. You know, I've never been the smartest guy in the room. I got through high school with below average marks and kind of struggled through a 2-year SATE diploma program. I didn't have any money when I started out either, no trust fund, that's for sure. Credit card debt and student loans meant that I had to start earning a living immediately after leaving school. However, due to the recession way back in the day, there weren't many jobs available at the time, so I figured that entrepreneurship was how I was going to make my fortune. And that didn't exactly work out as I envisioned it. After the banks took all my credit cards away from me and Revenue Canada actually declared that I was living below the poverty line for like the 3rd year in a row on my tax returns, I finally realized that this road to riches plan of mine was going to take a little more work than I originally thought. I'm not a naturally talented athlete either. After about a dozen years of sitting behind a desk pursuing my entrepreneurial dreams, I stepped onto the scale one day, and I was shocked to learn that I needed to lose 50 pounds. So I went out and entered a triathlon. Now, most people will start a diet or join a gym, but not me. No, I had to go and sign up to compete in the long-distance Ironman triathlon. and then I had to sign up for swim lessons because I didn't even know how to swim. I mean, what was I thinking? Can you imagine 1,500 people lining up to the water, in front of the water at the start of the race, and one of them is actually wearing a life preserver? Huh? But you know what? The simple fact that I signed up to compete in one of the most difficult sports in the world kind of says it all about me. And this is very typical of the kind of attitude that I've had for most of my life. You see, ever since I was a child, I've had this belief that I could accomplish things that were always just a little beyond my ability level at the time. Time and time again throughout my life, you know, I've bitten off way more than I could chew, and I've made some pretty crazy blunders in the process, and we're going to talk about a couple of those today. However, I learn from my mistakes. I continue to plug away, and I eventually succeed, and I've come to believe that you can accomplish some pretty amazing things in life when you just have a little faith in yourself, and this is important, you commit to doing something just a little bit bolder than what you think you're capable of doing, and that's the secret right there. You know, there's a really great piece of advice by German poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe that I've kind of tried to live my life by. What you can do or dream you can do, begin it, for boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So the whole idea behind this record attempt mission that I was on was conceived when I was 33 years old, and I had sold my company to Adobe Systems, which afforded me this wonderful opportunity to do something different with my life. The business that I started after school eventually took off when I started to make software for the desktop publishing revolution. This was actually one of Steve Jobs' early innovations at Apple Computer. My hard work eventually paid off, and by my 33rd birthday, my company was actually listed as the 86th fastest growing company in Canada. This was way back in 1993. Ended up attracting some attention from some larger U.S. corporations that were looking to expand by acquisition. But now I felt like it was time again in my life where I needed a new challenge. And I knew that it was time once again to step away from that comfort zone and to do something bold. So one day I was flipping through a stack of old Popular Science magazines. I know that doesn't sound very bold, but I came across the following cover that would actually end up changing my life. And it wasn't a rocket car or a jet pack or plans to build your own personal nuclear-powered miniature submarine or anything cool like that. It was just a bicycle. But it was a bicycle that had set the world speed record of 68 miles an hour. And they named the bike Cheetah, named after the fastest animal on Earth. I knew Cheetah, the animal, was capable of speeds like that, but I had no idea that a bicycle powered by a mere human being could possibly go that fast. And what an awesome-looking machine that was. You see, I've had this passion for bicycles since as long as I can remember. I remember my 6th birthday party when I got the bike of my dreams. It was a Schwinn Stingray 3-speed. Anybody have one of those bikes here? Am I the oldest? I'm not the oldest one. Had the 3-speed stick shift on the crossbar and the banana seat. You know, that was the coolest bike in the whole world to me back then. And I decided that this Cheetah was going to be my grown-up Stingray 3-speed. And I decided that's exactly what I was going to do. that I was going to build myself one of those wicked machines and that I was going to go after my own world record. So the next step for me is to always start with a clear vision of exactly what it is that I want to accomplish. And that vision in this case was the cover of Popular Science magazine featuring that cheetah. I don't think about how I'm going to achieve my vision or what the obstacles are or anything sensible like that. I just focus on the vision itself, the actual final outcome. And if the vision is strong enough, and if it's clear enough, and if I want it badly enough, then I just start my journey by taking my first step. So the journey to a world record for me began with this vision. And at the time, I was a very overweight, very unfit, very unhealthy guy. Not only would I bite off more than I could chew, but I would swallow it, and then I would take another bite, and I would take another bite. You know how that goes, right? Over the next 7 years, I would end up transforming myself into a 12-time Ironman triathlon finisher, including qualifying for and competing at Ironman World Championships in Hawaii. You know, it's been said that it's actually easier to get into Harvard University than it is to get into Ironman Hawaii. At the start of this quest, I didn't own a single tool, and then I went out and figured, well, I'm probably going to have to learn how to weld if I'm going to build a bike, so I went out and bought myself a TIG welder. And I taught myself how to weld using the TIG welder. Started only a couple of fires and burned myself a few times, but I actually eventually figured it out. I read every book that I could find on carbon fiber composites construction, and I studied aerodynamics, and I learned how to use a very sophisticated computer modeling application. You know, I probably could have just hired somebody smarter than me to design and build my bike for me, but I wanted to do this myself. So over the years, I plugged away through trial and error and all kinds of learning curves and cuts and bruises and a little bit of swearing at my computer screen until I had finally built my vision, my human-powered vehicle, which I named Critical Power. And I would have to say, she was equally as awesome as that cheetah. So, there I am, in the middle of Alabama, in the middle of the night, 20 hours now into this attempt at my world record, and I'm cruising along, hammering away on those pedals, and I'm still on record pace. And I know if I can hold it, I only have 4 hours left to go. And I thought, wow, this is really happening for me. I'm going to nail this baby. All of a sudden, the chain falls off the front chainring. I was in the middle of this hard push around a bank corner, and the chainring fell off, and my foot jerked forward, and I lost my balance. I went to regain it, and it ended up going right off the edge of the track and down this steep embankment. Landed at the bottom of the embankment, and I was upside down, and I was trapped inside. I can't get out because my pit crew duct taped me into my capsule when we started the record attempt at 9 o'clock that morning. So I pushed the radio transmit button that's fixed to my steering bar to call for help. But as luck would have it, I am at the far end of this track, and I'm just out of radio range, so nobody answers. And meanwhile, that clock is ticking loudly, and I can feel my record start to slip away from me. I had been passing my crew every 5 minutes as I made my way around that track. And I knew that since my radio wasn't working, it would just be a matter of time before they finally realized that I was overdue for my flyby, and they would send the truck to come out to look for me. So I remember I could hear the truck speeding down the track, and I thought, fantastic, if they get to me soon enough, I might still have a chance. I remember hearing the truck getting closer and closer and closer, and then I could hear it getting farther and farther and farther away, and they drove right by me. I mean, how could they miss me? That was their only job. It's not that hard. A little boring maybe, but I could see the headlines in the paper. Dead cyclist found in giant egg, trapped inside by duct tape. Finally, they heard my muffled screams. They got me out of the ditch, back on the road, but by then I had fallen behind that record pace. Wasn't really sure that I was going to be able to regain that precious lost time. Got going again, back up to my speed. 10 minutes later, the handlebars snap in two, right into my hands. So, you know, there I was barreling down the track at like 45 kilometers an hour with this useless piece of carbon fiber in my hands. The next thing I knew, I was skidding down the track on my side, down the middle of the track at 45 kilometers an hour, spinning around in circles like this. Ouch. That was it. Packed up and went home. I had failed. You know, it is, though, through failure that we learn, isn't it? In the words of Thomas Edison, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And that's exactly how I looked at my Alabama record attempt. I didn't fail. I succeeded in learning about what it's going to take to be the best in the world. You know, if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to try anything, and you're never going to learn anything. And unfortunately, I don't think you're ever going to move closer to your goal. So after the successful failure at the world record in Alabama, quitting was actually the farthest thought from my mind. I was already planning another attempt at the 24-hour record during our 2,400-mile drive back to Calgary. And when I got back to Calgary, I worked out all my technical problems, like with the chain falling off and the handlebars breaking. And I also embarked upon yet another exhaustive training program, which averaged 20 to 30 hours per week for 4 months. So this was a full-time job for me back then. I would be out the door on my bike all day long, pedaling hundreds of miles through traffic jams in the Highwood Pass. That's a rush hour, the Highwood Pass. And I wouldn't get back home again until long after the sun had set. And you know what? I loved every minute of it. That, to me, is really living life big. The other thing that we did when we got back to Calgary is we found a new racetrack in Eureka, California, which was a lot smaller. And I thought it would allow my crew to maintain visual contact with me around that course. So important. So 8 months later, on July 19th, 2006, we arrived at this new racetrack in Eureka for my second attempt at the world record. But I was shocked at how small that track seemed. Compared to my 3-kilometer track in Alabama, this new quarter-mile oval was way smaller than I kind of thought it would be. During practice runs, I was completing a lap every 20 seconds. And this compares to completing a lap every 5 minutes in Alabama. This, I thought, was going to take a lot of concentration. And to make matters worse, we had to section off some potholes on the track, so we laid a duct tape line down around the middle of the track to mark off a 9-foot wide lane. Ended up taking something like 50 rolls of duct tape. And my lane was so narrow that wind gusts threatened to blow me into that concrete wall as I rounded each lap 3 times a minute. Once again, I'm asking myself that question. What was I thinking? Sir Winston Churchill said, "When you're going through hell, keep going." On July 20th, the very next day, at exactly 9 a.m., I launched my second attempt at the world record on that tiny Eureka track. After 17 hours, once again, I was slightly ahead of record pace, but I was totally frazzled mentally from having to concentrate so hard on staying in my narrow lane. By 20 hours, I was starting to unravel, cramping up, dizzy, nauseous, felt like I was going crazy, around and around and around again, like some never-ending nightmare. I had slipped behind record pace and started to doubt myself. You know, those negative feelings that start slowly creeping in, feeling like a fool again, like what was I thinking, like I've got no business being here. I'm not a professional athlete, far from it. I mean, who do I think I am anyways?
Yeah, you slowed down.
Pretty significantly. He was a 43, 44, dropped to 49, and then a 54. This is a 56.
You know, then I thought, no way, Greg. No way. You've come way too far to let this slip away from you. You've got to dig deep. You've got to dig deep. And I remember something that I read in one of Lance Armstrong's books. There comes a point in every race when a rider encounters his true opponent and he realizes that it is himself. So I told myself, Greg, I said, the pain is temporary, but the pride will last forever. So I gritted my teeth. I let out a satisfying, as loud as I possibly could, and I started to crank away on those pedals like never before. In fact, like my very life depended on it. And at 23 hours, I actually passed the world record. And by the time the atomic clock finally ticked over to 24 hours, I had managed to tack on an additional 20 kilometers to finish with a total of 1,047 kilometers, which was a new world record. And by the end of the day, I had actually circled that track a total of 1,833 times that day. So, have you ever wondered how it feels to break a world record? That's what happens when you drink too much Red Bull. So how did I get that record? You remember it started with the vision of the cheetah on the cover of Popular Science magazine. My vision had come true. In fact, my vision realized itself to an extent that was almost a little bit spooky. Through no action on my part or anybody else that I know of, I actually ended up on the cover of Popular Science magazine. It was small, but I was on the cover. Thank you. And not only that, but they featured Critical Power and myself in a 2-page spread inside the magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, a clear vision is incredibly powerful. You know, I've been speaking today about an approach toward accomplishing a goal that works for me. Starting off with a bold goal and asking that what-if question. Developing a very clear, concise, focused vision of my success. And the importance of taking that first step, of just starting your journey. And I sincerely believe, with all my heart and soul, that that process can be applied by you to achieve your dream. Any dream. Not just building human-powered vehicles in your garage or setting world records, but of course, if that's what you want to do, I would say absolutely go for it. But that's not really my point here today. What is your dream? What is your grown-up Stingray 3-speed? What is your what-if question? And more importantly, what is stopping you from getting it? Stretch farther. Reach higher. Shoot for the stars. Don't dream big. Dream bigger. The reason a bold goal has a greater chance of succeeding than just an average one is because you will get excited about your challenge. And you will end up investing the appropriate amount of energy into achieving it. Unfortunately, I think anything less, and we just end up not caring enough. When you have a bold goal, you will have the passion and you will have the motivation that you will require on your journey. And at the end of the day, to me, that is what it's all about. It's about the journey. You know, the world and our lives are full of so many amazing possibilities. And unfortunately, most of us experience so little of it. When you step out there and you bite off more than you can chew, your boldness exposes you to this hidden magical part of life. And this hidden magical part of you too. And I think this was the magic that Goethe was talking about. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the number of moments that take our breath away. When your destination is bold, your journey will be epic. Thank you very much. Thank you.